Typhoon Kalmaegi, the deadliest storm in Asia this year, made landfall in central Vietnam on Thursday evening, bringing destructive winds and torrential rain to an area already reeling from a week of severe flooding. The typhoon, which re-intensified over the South China Sea after leaving a trail of devastation in the Philippines that claimed at least 142 lives, hit Vietnam's coastline in the provinces of Gia Lai and Dak Lak. Sustained winds of up to 149 kilometers per hour, 92 miles per hour, with much stronger gusts, were reported as the storm moved inland. The arrival of Kalmaegi, known as Typhoon 13 in Vietnam, compounds a crisis for central Vietnam, which has been grappling with record-breaking rainfall and flash floods since late October. Those earlier floods had already caused at least 47 deaths, inundated over 100,000 homes, and triggered more than 150 landslides across the region. Historic sites, including the UNESCO-listed Hoi and ancient town and Hue monuments, were submerged in the prior flooding. Vietnamese authorities, calling the storm very abnormal, had urged local officials to treat the situation with the highest urgency. Deputy Prime Minister Tran Hong Ha ordered all residents in identified high-risk coastal areas to stay indoors and banned all sea activities to minimize casualties. In anticipation of the typhoon's arrival, Vietnamese disaster agencies implemented mass evacuation plans. In Gia Lai and Dak Lak provinces, where the storm made landfall, approximately 350,000 people were moved to safer ground. A total of 6 airports in the central region, including those in Phu Cat, Chu Lai, Tai Hoa, Pleiku, and Buon Ma Thuot, were ordered to suspend operations from Thursday afternoon until Friday morning, affecting hundreds of flights. Coastal communities from Hue to Khanh Hoa were warned of significant risks, including storm surges of up to 0.6 meters, 2 feet, and waves as high as 8 meters, 26 feet. Meteorologists predict that Kalmaegi will bring exceptionally heavy, localized rainfall between November 6th and 7th. Areas from Da Nang to Dak Lak could see an additional 200 to 400 millimeters of rain, with some isolated spots exceeding 600 millimeters, 24 inches, per spell. This increased precipitation raises an extreme risk of further flash floods and landslides in mountainous areas, in addition to the existing flood risks in low-lying regions. The storm's current impact has already resulted in some damage reports, with trees uprooted on main roads and windows shattered in hotels in the Quy Nhon area as fierce gusts lash the coast. Emergency responders remain on high alert as the full impact of the storm continues to unfold overnight. Authorities in Vietnam's central Quang Nam province have issued their highest level of alert as the powerful Typhoon Kalmaegi, the 13th and deadliest storm to hit the region this year, closes in on the coastline. The typhoon is expected to make landfall late Thursday evening or early Friday morning, threatening a region already saturated by record-breaking floods that have claimed dozens of lives in recent weeks. As of Thursday afternoon, the National Center for Hydrometeorological Forecasting reported that the typhoon's center was approximately 70 to 100 kilometers, 43 to 62 miles, offshore, with maximum sustained winds of level 11 to 13, 89 to 117 kilometers per hour, and gusts potentially exceeding level 15 to 16 as it makes landfall. Provincial authorities in Quang Nam have been implementing urgent response measures for several days to minimize potential damage. The Provincial Department of Education and Training ordered schools in coastal communes and high-risk areas to close from Wednesday afternoon until Friday, November 7th. Military and border guard forces have been mobilized to assist with preparations. Officers and soldiers from the Sa Huyn Border Guard Station were on duty at the local fishing port, using loudspeakers to urge all fishing vessels to seek safe shelter immediately. Residents in vulnerable coastal areas were being actively warned to flee. An AFP reporter in the nearby Quy Nhon area witnessed officials going door to door, urging people to leave their homes and move to designated evacuation centers, such as local schools, which were being used as temporary shelters. Many elderly residents and children were seen arriving at these shelters with essential supplies, heeding the warnings of the authorities. The existing infrastructure, already weakened by previous flooding, faces increased unreliability and risk of failure during the storm. Authorities are also focusing on the flexible and safe management of local irrigation and hydropower reservoirs, lowering water levels where possible to absorb potential floodwaters and prevent disastrous downstream releases. As the eye of the storm nears the coast, residents have braced for an overnight ordeal, with the full force of Typhoon Kalmaegi expected to be felt across Quang Nam in the coming hours. Meanwhile, Typhoon Kalmaegi, also known as Typhoon 13, made landfall in Vietnam's central region on Thursday evening, crashing ashore in the adjacent provinces of Gia Lai and Dak Lak. The powerful storm arrived with destructive force, bringing strong winds that toppled trees and tore roofs from buildings across the Central Highlands area. As the storm approached, officials in Gia Lai had been operating on high alert, implementing extensive emergency response plans and completing the evacuation of vulnerable residents ahead of the typhoon's arrival. The storm center was located approximately 190 kilometers from the coastal city of Quy Nhon, which is in Binh Dinh province, bordering Gia Lai, by Thursday afternoon, moving rapidly west-northwest at speeds of 25 to 30 kilometers per hour. The typhoon intensified before landfall, with maximum sustained winds reaching levels 11 to 13, around 118 to 149 kilometers per hour, and even stronger gusts. Initial reports from the evening indicate that as the storm moved inland, it caused immediate structural damage. In nearby coastal areas like Quy Nhon, fierce gusts shattered hotel windows, and main roads saw uprooted trees and power outages were reported in some areas. While the winds caused immediate damage, the primary long-term threat remains the potential for catastrophic flooding and landslides. Gia Lai, a province with significant mountainous terrain and a location in the Central Highlands, is particularly vulnerable. The storm is expected to dump massive amounts of rain, with additional rainfall of 200 to 400 millimeters predicted for the region, and isolated areas potentially seeing over 600 millimeters. This comes after a week of prior record-breaking rainfall that had already saturated the soil and caused dozens of deaths across central Vietnam. Authorities are especially concerned about rivers swelling rapidly and the potential failure of weakened infrastructure, including irrigation and hydropower reservoirs, which are being monitored closely. In response to the severe weather conditions, air travel was significantly impacted. Pleiku Airport in Gia Lai province was ordered to suspend operations from 9 p.m. on November 6th until 6 a.m. on November 7th, affecting all incoming and outgoing flights. Seaports in nearby coastal areas like Quy Nhon also suspended all activities, requiring vessels to remain in sheltered anchorages. As the evening progresses, emergency teams are bracing for the peak impact of the storm, with residents remaining in evacuation centers as the full extent of the damage becomes clear overnight and into Friday morning. The situation in Da Nang was made more precarious by the fact that the region was still reeling from a separate, severe flood event that occurred in late October and early November. That earlier flooding had already caused significant damage, with more than 100,000 houses inundated or damaged across central Vietnam, and at least 47 people dead before Kalmaegi's arrival. Residents in Da Nang and nearby Hoi An, a UNESCO World Heritage Site that had been submerged just days prior, described the situation as exhausting, having moved furniture to higher ground multiple times in less than a week. As Thursday evening progressed, emergency responders and military personnel in Da Nang remained on high alert, preparing for potential search and rescue operations as the worst of the weather moved in overnight. the focus shifted to managing the inevitable rise in river levels and ensuring the safety of residents in vulnerable coastal and riverside communities. While the eye of the powerful Typhoon Kalmaegi is forecast to make direct landfall hundreds of kilometers to the north in Vietnam's central provinces of Quang Nam and Dak Lak, the effects of its wide circulation are being acutely felt in the south. Ho Chi Minh City, Vietnam's bustling financial hub, is on high alert due to a heightened risk of severe flooding caused by a dangerous combination of heavy rainfall and unusually high tides on the Saigon River. Meteorological warnings issued on Thursday focused on a dual threat for HCMC and the southern region. The storm's outer bands are expected to bring significant rainfall of up to 100 millimeters, 4 inches, to parts of the city. Critically, this rainfall is coinciding with a period of exceptionally high tides on the Saigon River. Forecasters have warned that the combination of incoming rainwater with the already high river levels poses a severe threat of inundating low-lying areas across the metropolitan area. The U.S. Consulate General in Vietnam issued a weather alert specifically for the southern region, urging U.S. citizens to exercise extreme caution, especially when traveling through low-lying areas known to be prone to flooding and tidal surges. While flights from HCMC to central region airports such as Phu Cat, Chu Lai, Ty Hoa, and Pleiku were canceled or rescheduled on Thursday and Friday, international flights operating from Tan Son Not International Airport in HCMC are expected to operate normally unless conditions drastically change. The situation remains fluid as the typhoon moves inland, with the primary concern for Ho Chi Minh City focusing entirely on the severe flooding potential that the combination of heavy rain and high tides is bringing to the bustling southern metropolis. While the storm's core is projected to make landfall slightly further south, the ancient town in Quang Nam province remains in the direct line of the typhoon's outer bands, which are expected to deliver a catastrophic deluge of rain to a region still underwater from previous flooding. The situation in Hoi An is critical because the town had barely begun to recover from a separate, severe flood event that occurred in late October and early November. Days before Kalmaegi's arrival, rising river waters from record-breaking rainfall had already submerged large parts of the ancient town, forcing businesses to close and residents to navigate streets by boat. The iconic Japanese covered bridge and riverside houses were partially underwater just days ago. The arrival of Kalmaegi compounds this disaster, bringing the threat of a second, potentially worse, wave of flooding. Residents describe the experience as exhausting, having to move their belongings to higher floors multiple times within a single week. For Hoi An, the wind is secondary to the imminent rainfall. The National Center for Hydrometeorological Forecasting has issued extreme weather warnings for Quang Nam province. Forecasters predict that areas from Da Nang to the Central Highlands could receive an additional 200 to 400 millimeters of rain, with isolated spots potentially exceeding 600 millimeters, 24 inches, over the next 24 to 48 hours. This volume of water, falling onto ground and river systems already at maximum capacity, significantly increases the risk of immediate, severe urban flooding and dangerous flash floods originating from the upstream Thursday Bon River Basin. Local authorities in Quang Nam Province and Hoi An City have been working feverishly to implement emergency response measures. Military and local police forces have been mobilized to assist residents in high-risk, low-lying areas in evacuating to designated safe shelters. Mandatory evacuation orders were issued for residents in communes and wards known to be vulnerable to deep flooding. All schools in the province were closed to ensure student safety and to utilize school buildings as temporary evacuation centers. Authorities focused on securing historical structures and essential infrastructure as much as possible, though the nature of the floods makes comprehensive protection nearly impossible. The unique blend of Vietnamese, Chinese, and Japanese architecture that gives Hoi and its UNESCO status is highly vulnerable to prolonged water exposure. The ongoing flood conditions threaten the structural integrity of ancient wooden houses and temples. As Thursday evening progressed, emergency crews braced for the storm's peak impact overnight. The entire community is anxiously monitoring rising river levels, hoping that the severe rainfall predictions will be less impactful than feared. The immediate future for the ancient town remains precarious as it navigates a double weather crisis. Meanwhile, the primary danger for Lam Dong is not wind damage, but hydrological hazards. The National Center for Hydrometeorological Forecasting has issued severe warnings predicting that the areas from southern Quang Tri Hue, Khanh Hoa, and Lam Dong provinces are likely to experience heavy rainfall, with totals ranging from 150 to 300 millimeters, 6 to 12 inches, and isolated spots potentially exceeding 450 millimeters, 18 inches. This comes after the province was already hit by heavy rains in late October and early November that caused fatalities and triggered significant landslides and surface cracks on major national highways like Highway 20 and Highway 28. The ground is completely saturated, making the western mountainous regions of the province highly susceptible to new landslides and flash floods. Authorities in Lam Dong are closely monitoring the situation. The province is included in high-level weather alerts issued by national and international agencies, which have urged all citizens in affected areas to exercise extreme caution and follow local directives. As a precautionary measure related to the storm, air travel was disrupted. Vasco Airlines announced the cancellation of flights OV-8024 and OV-8025 between Tan Son Nhat and Lien Quang Airport in Lam Dong Province on November 6th. Other flights to the region were also affected or delayed as the storm system disrupted normal operations across central and southern Vietnam.